Hey everyone, welcome back to Tag1 Team Talks. Today we're talking about the future of the group module with creator and maintainer Kristiaan van den Eynde. If you're building anything in Drupal where different people need different levels of access to different sections of your site, think teams, company departments, local chapters, membership tiers, you're probably using Group. And if you're building a platform on Drupal, one of its most powerful and popular use cases, think universities, corporations, government agencies running dozens, hundreds, even thousands of sites and microsites, you're almost certainly using it. It lets you control who sees what, who can edit what, who can manage what, and is all scoped to a specific collection of content and users, and it's relied on by some of the biggest organizations running Drupal today. I'm Michael Meyers, the Managing Director at Tag1, and my guest today is the creator and lead maintainer of Group, Kristiaan van den Eynde, a senior architect and engineering leader here at Tag1, who's been iterating on this module for over 13 years, which is really amazing. He's a top Drupal core contributor, a core subsystem maintainer, and not just an amazing engineer, he's also a really great communicator who's presented at numerous DrupalCons, Dev Days, and he's got that rare ability to take the most complex and detailed subjects and make them approachable to anyone. So whatever your background, I'm confident that you're going to get a lot out of today's episode. Kristiaan, welcome and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that nice introduction. It's nice to be here, and I'm looking forward to talk about Group and where we're going with it, and to answer some of the questions that people may be having and that you are going to ask today.
Awesome. Yeah, just to give people a quick overview of what we're going to talk about, the future of groups, right? The long-awaited consolidation from the two major versions into Group 4. You're doing a major restructuring of the module ecosystem, putting a lot of these submodules back into the core module. We're going to talk about improvements to some pain points like the experience editor, which I love that you've been so open about and working so hard to address. And I'm also really excited about talking about some of the code quality issues and what it takes to maintain and sustain such a popular module at this scale. But before we get into the future of Group, I want to talk about everyone's future with Tag1. Tag1 is the #2 all-time contributor to Drupal, the world's second most popular content management system. For nearly 20 years, we've been the architects of the open web, leading the creation of the software and best practices that powers millions of websites and thousands of organizations worldwide. We're your full-service strategic partner, applying that same architectural expertise across technologies and throughout your organization. From discovery and design to building and scaling complex applications, we lead AI strategy and implementation, design and manage infrastructure, and architect large-scale web applications across a wide range of technologies and platforms. We're trusted by industry leaders, including Sumitomo, NTT Data, the European Patent Office, and the American Federation of Teachers to solve their mission-critical challenges, and we build lasting solutions and relationships. Check out tag1.com to learn more about how we can help you. All righty. So with that out of the way, Kristiaan, before we talk about the future of groups, I've always wondered the origin. Why did you call it group module and not groups module?
Okay. So I've let it go, but at first it annoys me tremendously that anyone coming up to me at a con would say, "Oh yeah, I'm a fan of groups." I'm like, okay, but it's called Group. Um, but the way that came into existence is actually, as you may recall, before Group existed, everyone was using a module called Organic Groups. That's a long time ago now. Um, and I'm not going to go into the whole backstory of why I created Group, but I wanted to build this alternative with a different data structure and just basically a different vision of how I thought things like this could work. And I was looking on Drupal.org for like available project names. And I thought, let's keep it simple. What am I doing here? I'm building this in technical speak, this entity called a group. So let's just call it that, because if I tend to look at Drupal core a lot when I build stuff. And back then I wasn't a core maintainer even. So I just looked at the node module in core, like for contents. If you want to create a page or an article internally, that's called a node, and the module is just called node. So I had the same concept where I had this thing called a group, so I thought, let's call the module a group. Funny side story, that name was taken on Drupal.org, but it was taken by Amitai, the same guy who wrote organic groups.
Mhm.
And I don't know what he was planning to do with it. It seemed like he was trying to rewrite OG or something, and don't hold me to that. That may not be the truth, but I recall it being something around those things in that area. And then I just reached out to him and I said, hey, you know what? I'd like to take over this project namespace. Nothing is happening with it. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure, knock yourself out. And he gave it to me. And then I created Group, which later on surpassed organic groups. Um, by the way, all the love in the world for Amitai. He's a great guy. And even though I created like this competing module, so to speak, I really get along with him. It's been a while since I've seen him. Um, but yeah, so that's how group became to be. And I understand why people tend to call it groups because a lot of them migrated from organic groups. Um, but yeah, the name is group. And I think the ship has sailed, but I would appreciate it if people started calling it group because there was a reason behind calling it that. But if they're gonna keep calling it, then I guess it's fine. I'm not gonna hold it against them.
You won me over with the node argument. I've always wondered because I always, I know why people call it groups, but now it makes a lot of sense to me as to why you chose to do that. I think people are going to keep annoying you and calling it groups. I'll try not to annoy you too much today with it. And Amitai is awesome, and he's got his hands full with workspaces. He's another awesome Tag1 engineer. I'm sure he doesn't mind that Groups has been such a huge success. Um, so,
Yeah, no, definitely. Like we get along great. And even though I started out with like this different idea because he wasn't seeing music in what I was proposing in his issue queue, I don't hold it against him. My issue queue has exploded. Like there's probably some people putting really great ideas out there, like right this instant, that just have flown under my radar because I'm so swamped with everything. Um, but when we did finally got a chance to meet in person, it was awesome. And then we've met a couple of times after that, and yeah, nothing but love for Amitai. So.
hell yeah. So Back to the Future can, set the stage for everybody at a high level. You're thinking about the architecture for the newest version of Groups. What are your guiding principles? Like, what are you thinking about? How do you structure your approach to this?
Okay. So uh, at very first, when I wrote group, I accepted all of the feature requests. I had so many ideas. I just worked on all the things at once, right? And it became bloated, it became unmaintainable, and it led to this situation where people came with even more feature requests because they saw that, anything goes, right? And then in the later versions, I tried to steer away from that and make it more mature. Um, and the people at Decent in the UK, who I was working for at the time, they actually helped me with that because they gave me a space where I could bounce these ideas off of them, and they would, provide insights with their experience and challenge me. Um, so that's how the sort of like building blocks of version 2 and 3 came to be. And the very first Drupal 8 version also, even though I'm not a fan of that one anymore. But over time, you'll see that I've tried to make it more and more mature
Mhm.
and and following industry standards more and more. And obviously, as I grew as a developer, I saw more things. I started recognizing patterns. I saw things that we were doing in core. I copied those over. Then I found that some of these things were lacking, and I improved upon them, which is how we got some systems into core, like variation cache and the access policy API. Um, and these are like the sort of habits that I've grown to have that I want to continue having towards the future, where I look at what I can improve and try and make these iterations where it just becomes more and more mature, more and more stable, and I keep challenging the status quo. So if there's something in core that doesn't allow me to do what I want to do, instead of just accepting it, challenge it and try to make that change from the outside. And then if it works, try to get that into core. Or if it's not a fit for core, or if it doesn't work, okay, at least build it in a way that we can move away from it if the experiment turns out, to not have the desired results, right?
I want to put you on the spot here. I want to do a follow-up talk where we talk about the evolution of module maintainership and the things that you've learned because you've gone through this amazing arc. This has become such a popular and widely used module that has really shaped core. Like the story arc here, what you've learned, I think, even people who are maintaining smaller modules would really benefit from, you know, your takeaways, your hard, earned success and
Yeah.
lessons. So, um,
I um I think I gave a presentation on that subject or adjacent to that subject in Vienna like 2 or 3 years ago on at Dev Days. So if people want to see some of that content already, they can look that up. I've put all of the recordings of my previous talks on my Drupal.org profile, so they're easy to find. Um, so yeah, I think it was called What It's Like to Maintain Large Scale Software or something. Um, and I had a little story in there. So basically it was like half a session and then I just stopped showing slides and I just started, talking. It was a unique experience to do that and I actually quite enjoyed it. So there is a recording of some of that story already, but I can definitely go more into that if you want to.
yeah, that would be awesome. I'll definitely take you up on that. So I know one of the biggest things that you're focusing on with a new version of groups is consolidating down to a single module, right? So for a long time now, you've been maintaining two major versions of groups side by side. I mean, most people can't,
Mhm.
manage a large module of this nature. Talk me through why you chose to split this out into two modules to begin with, and some of the challenges that you've created from that.
Okay, so this is one of the biggest regrets from my professional career, is that I went ahead with this. And in the end, I still think it was the right choice, but it's caused me so much pain that if I had a time machine, I'm not sure if I would do it again. Um, but essentially, when I developed Group at first, and then going into the first version for Drupal 8, and then trying to create this second version, which was a lot more mature and moved away from the concepts that I had still inherited from Drupal 7. Um, the only thing that you could put inside a group was, what we consider content entities. And content entities are like pages, articles, but it could also be a different group. It could be all the things that you are used to creating in Drupal in like a form. You fill out some fields and then something gets saved, and that is a piece of content. Um, but there was a desire from the community to also be able to put configuration into groups, and that would be, the configuration, for instance, of what field should be on an article, or especially popular, the web form module. Web form allows you to create these forms on the fly, and a lot of that is tied to configuration. You couldn't put that inside a group at the time. So right before the release of the second version of Group, we actually had this sponsorship from Eynde out of Japan, and they wanted that functionality where you could put web forms inside of a group. So I made that possible. There was an issue on Drupal.org for a long time in my issue queue where people tried to make that possible, and they created this patch and it would change the database and it would do all sorts of funky things. And all throughout the lifetime of that issue, I told them, be very careful with this patch because going back from it might be really tricky, right? And I'm not sure about the approach. But now that we had this sponsorship from Anai, I had all the time in the world, so to speak, to properly think about this and to, experiment. And I came up with a solution that was actually quite elegant that didn't require me to change a database at all. So I pushed ahead with it. and I managed to get that in before the 2.0 release. But now I had this conundrum because inside of the group module, the thing that was representing which content belongs to which group was called group content. That's just the name of a piece of software. Um, and you probably wouldn't think twice about that, but I do because it no longer represented the truth. Because that piece of code could now not only represent content inside of a group, but also config. So the name no longer ranked true. And it turns out that changing names of code, of classes, that's not all that hard. But these pieces of code usually have what we call a machine name. And it's that specific piece of text that we put in a database. And changing that is really hard in Drupal, it turns out. But I wanted to change it, and I didn't want to have like two names like group content and group config. I wanted to have a name that represents all of the things. So I ended up going with the name group relationship. It's a relationship between a group and something that you put in it, whether that's content or config, or perhaps in the future something completely different. You know, it's just a relationship between those two. So that sounded like a future-proof name, and I wanted to go with that. But changing that name, well, it was possible for the most part, but not in the database. Um, so now I was stuck. So what I ended up doing was I said, you know what? I'm gonna change the name wherever I can, as except for the few places where I can't, and that's going to be version 2. So people who were on version 1 can go to version 2 and nothing will crash because it will in the database and you know where it matters, it will still be the same name. But at the same time, I'm going to release version 3, which is exactly the same as version 2. It's an exact copy, except it will have those new names also in the machine names. And that was a really dumb idea. But it worked. It worked. But the notion was that if someone wanted to create a new website, they would start with version 3. And then, you know, we would figure it out later. So someone coming from version 1 to 2 would be fine, and someone with a new website would be on version 3. And, you know, when we get to version 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and whatever, you know, it's a bridge we'll have to cross then. Um, and you know, with version 4 on the horizon, we actually managed to cross that bridge, but it took a long time and a lot of investigation. But I finally managed to figure out an upgrade path to let people go from version 2 to 3, to change those special names, and it seems to be working. The feedback I've gotten so far is that yes, it takes a lot of effort, but the code that I've written to help you get through it really helps. Without it, it would have been a nightmare, and now it actually helps a lot. So it seems that it's possible, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Um,
so tell me more about that upgrade path. You know, if I'm on 2, do I need to go to 3 to get to 4? Do I go from 2 to 4? You know, what is your upgrade software, help me with?
yeah. So you do have to go to version 3 first, and then you can go to version 4 just like anyone else. So the whole point is that in the latest update hooks, so to speak, the code that we write to allow you to update your software. So in version 3, I've added some of that code that allows you to download version 3 on top of version 2 and run those updates. And it will do most of the heavy lifting for you. And then there's this user manual on Drupal.org that tells you exactly what to do after that, because there will be some files on your disk that you need to look through and make some changes. There will be custom codes that you need to make some changes to because I cannot predict which or what custom code you've written for your project, right? But all of that is written down in this document and it has steps to follow. And people have given me the feedback that it was very useful. Um, Nowadays, obviously, Most projects start with version 3 and soon they will start with version 4. So for them, it's a non-issue. It's just for those legacy projects that keep upgrading to the latest version to have like secure software with coverage and everything. They may be interested in that. But I've even heard that from some people who have these large websites that they have managed to get to the latest version already. So it definitely works, but it will require some expertise. You wouldn't want to put a junior on that, so to speak. You want to put one of your best people on that.
If I'm launching a new site and using group, what module should I be using today? Should I be using three? Is four something I can start with today? Um,
Um, you should be using 3 because the upgrade to 4 should be quite seamless. But if you want, you can try out 4 already. It's actually very stable. It's just that it's a dev release right now. And that means that because there's no full release, I do still reserve the right to make drastic changes. I don't envision making them anymore because most of the roadmap that I had in mind is completed. Um, it's just that there is that slight possibility. Um, but it shouldn't break your stuff anymore because I'm not planning to make big data architecturally like complex decisions anymore. Like the data architecture is the same as I would want it to be. It's just some features right now, some UX, basic polish because it's actually like 90% done, perhaps even more. Um, so you could try starting on version 4 already. Yeah, sure, you could try. I probably won't blow up your project, but keep in mind that there is a chance that I still might. Um, but probably not. So you could definitely try.
I vote for the bleeding edge, but there is a good upgrade path in there. People can make their own decision. Another big change that you've made is, really addressing this amazing module ecosystem that you've created, right? You have subgroups, group sites, context providers. There's a lot of, modules and submodules that are part of group. My understanding is now you want to pull some or all or a lot of that back into the main module. What's driving that decision?
Maintenance, really just maintenance. To give you an idea, so for each update that I made for a group 2 or 3 right now, let's say I made a new release which deprecated some code, that's technical speak, which had a feature that would no longer be supported in the future. So people can still use it now, but there's already an alternative. And if they want, they can start using the alternative, right?
Mhm.
Um, Whenever I did that, I needed to create that for version 3. Then if it had any of those funky names that I discussed in like 10 minutes ago, um, I needed to also create a version for 2 where those names are changed. Then I needed to go to my subgroup module and start implementing those changes, but also do that for version 2 because just like group, subgroup had like 2 versions to support both versions of group. And I would have to do that for all of my ecosystem modules that I was maintaining. And the reason that I did this, that I had all of these modules out there in an ecosystem to begin with, was to have them as examples. Because I do not believe in privileged code. I do not believe that if I want to offer functionality from within group, that my code should have special access to do stuff. What I can do, you should be able to do. That's always been the premise of how I write my code. And I try to adhere to that as much as possible. So by having subgroup and group sites as standalone modules, it's truly a testament to that fact, to show people that, you can do this with group, right? Um, but it's become such a pain to maintain because now I have multiple issue queues. I have multiple versions. If I want to create a new release, I have to do that for all of these modules. That I started to think, you know what? I've proven that this can work. But why don't I just pull all of these features that people usually want back into group? because the whole concept of bloats no longer exists on today's internet. In the past, you would have to, think about how much space you were taking up on disk, how much you were pulling over the wire when you were downloading modules. Yeah, none of that is true anymore. We have, not everywhere in the world, but most places have caught up with modern times, and, downloading a couple of extra megabytes is no longer a hurdle, right? Um, so getting all of that code back into the main module would mean that if I make these changes, I can do it all in one go. If I make a change in group that other modules that depend on group would need to adapt to, I can immediately do that in subgroup and group sites and what have you, in one release. And I don't have to go to all of these other projects and make simultaneous releases, because I tended to make mistakes. If it's like tedious, repetitive work, I tend to put out a release that was tagged the wrong way or something, and I would only notice like after the weekend, and then things had blown up already, and it's just it's cumbersome, and I see no reason anymore why I should make my life so hard, because I'm gonna stick to my principles. It's not because I'll put the code back into group that I'll start slacking and just making it privileged. That's not who I am. So why keep this public separation with multiple project pages? Just put it all in one go, in one module. And then if there is at one point a submodule that I'll create that I really think is out there and not for the masses, but like for edge cases, yeah, maybe that deserves its own project space still. But I've had such great feedback on subgroup and group sites that, just put it in the main module. And if people don't need it, it's like 1 or 2 megabyte on their disk that won't be used. Who cares?
Yeah, I you know, I don't know how much people appreciate, I think a lot of people do know, but not everybody understands the huge cost and burden of maintaining a module like this and all of its related modules. So anything that you can do to make your life easier. I mean, there's well over a dozen modules that we're talking about here. So having over a dozen issue queues that you're monitoring, maintaining, like it makes total sense for you to be wanting to make this change again. I think this is like a really awesome lesson. There are a few modules of this scale with so many submodules, but still this concept does apply. It's a great lesson for people out there that are maintaining modules, trying to maintain their own sanity, as to, how you can have great engineering principles while also making your life a little easier. Um, you mentioned group sites a couple of times there. Give me a sense of why it's such a big deal, especially for organizations that are running what are essentially multiple sites off of a Drupal installation, because I think this is one of the most powerful use cases and frankly, one of the most amazing, reasons people adopt Drupal, right? It's really driving a lot of the platform.
Yeah. So out of the box, Drupal has always had this concept of multi-sites. And as you know, I'm trying not to offend anyone, but I'm pretty sure that no one is actively maintaining that. But it's horrible. Like it's the way it's, developed, and not about, code quality, but just the concept, the way it works. It hasn't really been revisited in ages, right? It hasn't caught up with modern times at all. Um, and I noticed that a lot of people were using group to create multiple like microsites within one website, so that in a back office they could add all of the content they wanted, and it would show up on like 1 or 2 microsites, or just one or multiple. And um, I saw this really great example of this like many years ago, I think almost 10 years ago, when I was working in the UK. We had this website for a lot of pubs, but it was all maintained by like this one large brewery. But each pub would have its own look and feel, its own style, its own domain name. And a couple of years ago, I had this idea, like, they were using Group for that already, sure, but they had a lot of custom code. I want to make this more accessible because this is something awesome, right? And because I had by then already created the predecessor of access policies, I had also found a way to make this really fast, faster than group on its own.
Mhm.
Um, so I set out with this concept and I created it and instantly got like amazing feedback. I cannot talk about who it was, but we managed to sell the ID to one of our clients when I was working in Germany at Factorial, which was like a large multinational. And their whole new web platform is built on group sites and it's really fast. Um, and then we had, I think it was called Local Gov. I think they're based in the UK, if I recall correctly. They also reached out to me. They had a couple sessions at Dev Days outlining how they were using group sites and how they actually built something before they realized that group sites existed. And they were like, oh shit, this is awesome. And they actually went through the effort to move everything to group sites. And they've been content with that decision ever since. Um, so now we actually have a modern solution for microsites in Drupal again. It's just not in core, it's in group. And to be fair, I think that's actually a great thing because this doesn't belong in core. This is something that you want specially tailored software for. I think it's actually Mosh. You know Mosh, right?
Of course.
So, of course, you know Mosh. People listening may not realize it, but Mosh and I, we both maintain the user system,
Mhm.
subsystem in core. And during one of these talks that we had with subsystem maintainers a couple months ago, Moshe was actually saying, why do we still have this system in core? It needs to go. And I asked for some clarification and he really meant like, yeah, we should just, bank on group to get that part sorted. It doesn't belong in core anymore. And I fully agree with him. And not because I'm the author of group, but just because, as a core maintainer, it doesn't make sense to have that in core. Now that we have the access policy API in core, anything goes, anything is possible, especially multi-sites. So let's just put that in group. And if someone has another idea on how they want to create that, then, they can also do that in Contrib. Just like I created group versus organic groups, someone else might have a different idea for faster multi-sites and leverage the access policy API differently. Who knows? But all of that is possible now, and it should no longer be our concern. Well, our as in core maintainers. It's my concern as in the group maintainer. Um, but yeah, it's really powerful. It leverages all of the latest technology, and it allows you to just choose any sort of like context in which you want to trigger which microsite is active, whether that's a domain name or part of the path in the URL or your location in the world or anything we can detect from the context of your browser session, so to speak, we can use to choose which microsite to show you, which is absolutely bonkers. Like that's so awesome. And it works really well. And it basically just tells the database, I know you have like a million microsites in there, but I only need this one. And the database, because of some trickery with the access policy API, will go, oh, okay, that's fine. I just forgot that there are like 999,000 other websites out there. I just only know about this one, which makes all of the queries really fast. So yeah, it's one of the things I'm most proud of because it's like the accumulation of all of the things I've built over the past decades, and it works so well together that it's really awesome to see.
I think it's at the heart of a lot of Drupal's success, frankly. It is certainly at the heart of every platform build that we do. We build a lot of platforms. We're talking, intranet for one of the 10 largest companies in the world with, massive amounts of groups, content security, permissions, access controls. Um, platforms of platforms where organizations have multiple copies of their platform running for, massive divisions or separate companies under their umbrella. And every one of them is powered by, fundamentally powered by this capability. And they're extremely fast. They're extremely capable. And it's hard to imagine how you would have done this historically would have been, painful. Um, and if I remember correctly, Moshe was a maintainer of, or at least heavily involved in organic groups at one point.
I think so, yeah. Many people were
Yeah.
actually. One of the Belgians that I've known over the years, Peter Frensom, was also very involved in it at the European Commission, I think.
Mhm.
So yeah, lots of great people. Because don't get me wrong, um, how do I put this without sounding cocky? But there are a lot of people out there who walk up to me at conferences and want to talk to me.
Mhm.
But there are still a lot of people out there who I want to talk to. And even though I've had this great success with the group module and Peter was still working on organic groups, for instance, Peter is one of the people I still really look up to. When I was a junior developer in Belgium, not a lot of people know this. I was working at my very first job at a university college in Antwerp. We were out of our depth with our Drupal website, and we hired this agency from Leuven, where Peter was working. And we went there to just, talk about the technical requirements and stuff. And he had this whole setup, and he like felt this vibe, how fe people can connect. And he felt like, I was really into all of this. I was like, oh yeah, let me show you something. And we walked up to his desk, and he had like all of these screens with multiple tests running, and it was like thousands upon thousands of automated tests, and it was like this beautiful system. When people weren't talking about automated tests that much yet, he had multiple screens full of them. So he was like truly a pioneer in my eyes. And so I don't know how I got to this executive if you want, but just to show that where we are now is a happy accident of all of these people inspiring me over the years, allowing me to suck up all of this knowledge like a sponge and then do something with it myself, and then, feeling empowered enough to see places that I want to make change.
Mhm.
Um, because I mean, if we had tried to start this journey in core, it would have never landed. I know that for sure now. As a core subsystem maintainer, having tried to get things into core, having failed to get things into core, succeeded, like having had all of that journey, I know for a fact that if someone had group not existed and had, group sites not existed and access policy API and all that stuff, over the past decade, had people created an issue on Drupal.org saying, hey, this whole microsite thing we have going on, or multisite thing, it's not great. Can we do something else? There would have been a lot of discussion and head nodding saying, yeah, 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 but absolutely nothing would have gotten done. And I'm not saying that as in, oh, look at me, I'm the savior of Drupal multisites. No, no. I'm just saying that all of this was like a cosmic coincidence of people meeting each other at the right place at the right time, and this just growing organically. Funny, funny, funny word to use in this context, like growing organically into what it is now. But I really believe that it has benefited Drupal a lot. Um,
As they
like
say,
the access policy API is like amazing. People keep walking up to me and say, I just did something absolutely crazy, and I never realized that this was possible, and it is. Nowadays, there's so much you can do with Drupal that people just don't realize yet.
I think it's one of the things that's always been at the heart of Drupal, the saying, come for the code, stay for the community. There are so many amazing people to learn from, and we can all and do learn from each other, and the evolution of these ideas over time, often that come together, meeting together at conferences and talking about things. And we're certainly very opinionated and stubborn people in a lot of ways, but we also, really, I think, do, welcome these ideas. And, it's clear that OG, was phenomenally successful for its time. And, new ideas come in, nothing lasts forever, things change. And this is the evolution of that. And it's built on a lot of great ideas from a lot of people. I think one of the things that I love about you is your critical approach to things. Not just, what you're talking about earlier about how things are implemented in core and we should rip them out, but you're also really candid about, your own code, your own product group and what you can improve. And I know that that's a big thing that you're trying to address in four. Maybe the editorial experience is the perfect example of that. You've been the first to get out there and say, yeah, it's been rough. There are clear challenges with this. Um, can you tell us how you're trying to address some of like the workflow issues and capabilities for editors, which is, a big pain point for users?
Yeah, definitely. Um, so quick backstory to those listening in who may may hear a lot of familiar things in the next few sentences, but trying to get content into a group can be really annoying, depending on how you set it up. Because not every piece of content that you want to put in the group is treated similarly. So if you want to put a page or an article in a group, um, you just care about that page or article being in the group. And you don't usually want to specify, why or how you put that inside the group. You just want it to belong to that group, right? Um, Alternatively, if you want to put a user in a group, there are multiple ways to do that, but usually it's under the guise of a membership. So you want to put that user inside of a group, but now you do care about why or how that user belongs to that group. So we have some extra information on that relationship between that user and that group. For instance, which roles they should have in that group. So one user could belong to group A with no roles, but could belong to group B with very administrative level roles, right? So that's why we have the capability of adding fields, ergo metadata, to this relationship between a group and whatever you put inside of it. Now, the issue with that is that we need to show a form for that metadata, right? And so in the past, the best I could come up with was to create this sort of wizard where you could configure whether or not you wanted that second step to specify the metadata. So at first, you would have this form to create a page. And then, if we didn't get to that second step, great, you would just create that page and that would go inside the group immediately. Um, but sometimes if you misconfigured that, or if you did need that second step, people would end up on this form where they were supposed to specify metadata about, why this article belongs to a group, and it would confuse them because they just created an article and now I'm on the second form, what's going on? And sometimes that form would even be empty because some administrators would see fields there, but a regular user wouldn't. So when they got to that form, it was just blank and they got the second button to click save and then their article got added to their group, which made no sense whatsoever. So that user experience was horrible to say the least. Um, and it's frustrated me for a while, and there were solutions to it in the past. Like there is this module called inline entity forms, where I could have chosen to nest that second step inside the form of the first step. But I didn't want to introduce that dependency.
Mhm.
It's very complex. It works well nowadays because I believe things like the paragraphs module rely on it. So it does work well, but I didn't want to introduce that complexity into group for actually the very small part where it's used. Because for a paragraphs module, it's used all over. That's like the core functionality of that module to have all of these nested forms for each individual paragraph. But for group, that wasn't, what I was selling. Um, so now for version 4, I've managed to find a lightweight alternative where you absolutely no longer have that second step. But if there, I sort of like check if there is metadata required for the relationship. And if it is required, then you will see it on the first form. And it will validate properly, it will save properly, but you will never have more than one form. And if there's nothing to show, it will just show nothing. So you won't have like a second step that's blank. No, you will just have your original form. So that's one thing where I can already improve the editor experience. The second thing is that people who have worked with group will notice that, for instance, if they want to create a page inside a group, that they do so on a custom URL. It's something like slash group slash the ID of the group slash content slash add slash notes column page or something. It's like a very funky URL. Um, and it looks exactly the same as if you were to go to the regular form to add a page, like slash node slash add slash page. But yet it's at a different URL and it behaves differently, and some of the options aren't available. And that was also because um, I needed to know what group you're trying to add this page to. So by having that form on that special page, part of that information is in the URL. So now I know, oh, you're trying to add a page to like group 13 or something. So that's why I needed to have it there. But it's annoying because people who are trying to alter this form or do something special with it, now there's like two forms and they need to make sure that they change it everywhere. Um, and all of the links that people tend to click on to create this page, they're not working for groups. So you need to have like custom buttons and custom links, and it's just it's a hassle. So one of the things that I'm trying to do for version 4, this will not land in version 4.0, but I'm trying to get it in version 4.1, is this notion of context. So by um, taking what I've built for group sites, which is very good at detecting what group, what microsite we're trying to show you, what if we take that same system, we put it in the main module, and we use that so that at any point in time, you as an editor can say, I'm currently working on this microsite, or if you're not using microsites, just I'm working on this group. And now you can go to all the regular forms anywhere. So if you want to add a page, you go to the form where people on a regular Drupal site would add a page. If you want to add a user, same story. If you want to add anything, you just go to that form and then group behind the scenes, whereas it used to not be able to answer the question, what group are you trying to add this to? We now can, because we have this thing in the back that tells us the context that the editor is in. So the editor is currently trying to add something to, let's say, the Belgian website,
Mhm.
right? And I would know that. So when they add a page, I would know to put that in the Belgian group, right? So that can work. And we can do a lot more with that, so that it's really intuitive. And then with the fact that we rule out that second step, because we can now put that in the main form, we can also ensure that if we needed data on that relationship, it would also show up, because we can put that nested form anywhere. It doesn't have to be our specific form. It can be the ones that ship with core or any other module. So this is the vision that I have for a better editor flow. It's from now on, or version 4.1, you will be able to use all the forms that you were used to using in Drupal, and it will work. Imagine not having to train your users. Oh, if you want to add a page to the regular site, you have to go here. And if you want to add a page to like this special section of the site, you have to go here. No, just if you want to add a page, you go there, and it will just work. I think that's pretty awesome compared to what we have now. So that's what I'm aiming for, and I'm fairly confident that we can get that to work. Especially, again, I keep repeating myself with the Access Policy API, we can do something really awesome. Because before, imagine you're a user who can create pages in your group, but you are not allowed to create pages on the general website, right? That would be a problem. Because with this new system, you need access to that form to create pages, that form that everyone uses. But if you don't have access to create pages on the general website, then how do you get to that form to actually create that page for your group? Well, with the Access Policy API, you can, because I can figure out that you belong to a group where you have access to create pages. So as soon as in that context thingy, you switch to say, hey, I'm trying to edit stuff in the context of this group, you have access to that form. Switch context again to the general website, you lose access to that form. That's now possible with the Access Policy API.
That's awesome. I love your willingness to be critical, your focus on, improvement. You clearly care about, architecture, engineering principles, naming conventions,
Yeah.
to the point where you made your life, almost a living hell here. I know one of the things that you've talked about is wanting to, raise PHPStan levels and code quality standards on group over time. Um, can you, I don't know that everybody is familiar with PHPStan, code quality, where things are at. Just at a high level, could you give a little bit of a backstory, and then, why is it that you want to make it even better? What's your
Okay.
focus here?
All right. So for those who are unaware, PHPStan is a sort of analysis tool that looks at your code and tells you where you are or might be doing things wrong. And it has multiple levels. And at the lower levels, it complains about very basic things. And as you go up, it starts complaining about all the things. And it can be very annoying. It can be very loud. But usually it's right. With Drupal, there are some rules that don't make sense, but most of the time it's correct. What this means is that you could start at the ground level and add this tool to your module, and it will tell you all the places where it thinks you're doing the very basic stuff wrong, right? And then you clean that up because it leads to more stable code, but it also means that people who are using your codes can use it in a more stable manner. For instance, they can only offer the data that your code expects, and they will get data in return that your code promises it will return, and PHPStan will actually check for that and make sure that if you're promising to return like a piece of text, that you're not returning numbers, stuff like that, right? And as you go up and increase the level, it will start complaining about more technical stuff. And at the highest level, it complains about all the things. I think it's not impossible, but it's quite hard to succeed at that highest level when writing a Drupal module because we need to call so much code from Drupal core, and Drupal core isn't at the highest level. So there is like this difficult choice to make between how you work around that. And I believe you can get to that highest level if you abstract all the pieces you need from core with like some in-between code, so to speak. Um, that's possible, but I'm not gonna go as far. My goal is to see how much I can raise that level and then perhaps find some things it complains about where I'm like, okay, because it's Drupal, I'm just gonna ignore this part,
Mhm.
but at least raise it over time because it will force me to write cleaner code. It will force me to write code that people can more reliably use. And overall, while Group has a lot of UI elements, and it does a lot of like a lot of magic out of the box, um, in its core, I've always considered it an API module because there is so much that you can do with it with custom code and behind the scenes, even though it has like, I wouldn't say a great UI because we just talked about how shit the user experience can feel. But even though it has a lot of UI elements going for it, I want to make sure that it's an API first module, that the code comes first, and then I build a UI on top of it while calling my own API, so to speak. And this goes back to what I talked about previously. I don't like privileged code. So if I can build a form for my module, then someone else can build a form too. How do we achieve that? By having a good API so that my form can call that API and someone else's form could just as similarly call my API. Um, and that's where I want to go. So this builds upon this whole story that I've been telling for the past hour, or something along those lines. Um, that we we want to improve over time. We don't want to stagnate. We want to keep getting better. And I think one of the ways to do that is to make sure that we grab all the old codes, we clean it up, and we raise the level. And then when we write new code, it has to adhere to that higher standards. And then we raise the level again and again and again until we get close or actually to that highest standard. And then once you have code that adheres to that highest standard, it should be so well written and perhaps so abstract that you could again look at the pieces that are doing something special, take those out of the module, and put those in core or put those into a PHP library that even non-Drupal projects can use. I've thought about this. Like some of the stuff I'm doing in group, people could benefit from that in Laravel, in Symfony, and whatever, right? But right now it's very hard to separate that code out because it's so tied into Drupal. And stuff like PHPStan could help me separate it more easily by making sure that my code becomes cleaner and more self-reliant and more separated from all the Drupalisms.
That's man, it's a whole other topic I'd love to follow up on. It's something that comes up. We're working on a strategic consulting gig right now where they're trying to figure out, the right level of code quality and testing to balance, business needs with, development, friction. And there's a lot of pros and cons to this. I think it's something that would be a fascinating talk. But we've talked a lot about what I want to talk about, and I know we need to wrap up. So I want to ask you: is there anything that you want to cover about the future of group that I haven't asked about?
Yeah, so very recently, people have talked to me about some ideas they had, and I got really excited about them. And there's two in particular. Um, One of them is public versus private groups. Um, it's something that I know exists in this distribution called Open Social,
Mhm.
and I know that they've been sort of struggling with getting that to work correctly. They've managed, obviously, but they've had to write a bunch of custom code. And truth be told, I've let them cook for all this time. I couldn't really care because I didn't have the time to care about something like that, right? But now recently, internally at Tag1, a coworker asked me, how would you envision this functionality? Um, and obviously, when given like a blank canvas, I go nuts. I mean that's where I have fun. So I thought, okay, let's entertain this thought. Is this possible? Is this manageable? Would this be performant enough to make into something real? Um, and the answer is it's actually very doable. So I gave that coworker some pointers, and then I realized it actually wouldn't be that much work to do this myself and put this in the main module. So if Open Social or anyone from Open Social happens to listen in, they're probably gonna get a real jump scare here because it might be coming to group. And if it does, then good for Social because they can drop all of their custom stuff around it and perhaps implement what's shipped with group. Bad for them because they're probably gonna wanna move to the new thing and that requires some effort. Um, but yeah, it's very doable. And the cool thing about that would be that you know the notion of public versus private groups has intrigued me for a while, and I had to be convinced about the use case in the past. But I currently do see the use case, and I just couldn't figure out how I wanted to achieve this. But now I realize that, we could just hand out two separate sets of permissions. Like if the group is public, people from certain roles would get certain permissions, but then if the group becomes private, they would get different sets of permissions. And with that in mind, we could have something really cool where like groups are hidden, and then if you get, let's say, a sort of access key or like beta access, then all of a sudden that group would be accessible to you, and you could choose to opt into that beta trial or whatever. And then you would get access to that group because even though it's private, now you have the right permissions to actually see it and interact with it, stuff like that. So yeah, it's something that wasn't on my radar until very recently. And then when I was given the opportunity to think about it properly, I realized it wouldn't be that much of an effort to actually make this possible. So I could definitely bake that into the main module. It wouldn't even have to be a sub-module because from a user perspective, it would just be a flag, like a checkbox you would tick, and that would just work. So it seems a bit overkill to create a custom module for that. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. And then the other thing is something that I can see ending up in Drupal core again. Um, is that currently when we build lists in Drupal, um, we don't have a lot of options to limit access to what you should be seeing in that list. So to give you an example, if you take the front page of any Drupal website, if like a very standard Drupal website, on the front page you could usually see a list of articles, right? But you don't see all of the articles in the system. You don't see the ones that are still unpublished, that people are still creating. You don't see the ones that have some sort of access control, whether that's group or domain or any other access module, right? You don't see those. Um, because of a thing called query access. When we go to the database to ask for all of the articles that it can show us, when we get that result, we actually in that process of retrieving those results, we reduce that list to the ones that we know you can see, right? And the key verb here is see, the ones that you can see, because we go to the database from Drupal saying, give me the ones I can view. And we have something similar for two other operations where you can build a list of articles as an editor, for instance, saying, show me the articles that I can edit, or show me the articles that I can delete. And that's pretty cool because then you would actually get a list where on every article's button somewhere, if you click on edit, you actually get to an edit form instead of getting an access denied all of a sudden. Because we built a list with a bunch of articles, but we never checked for access, and now you want to click edit and it doesn't work, right? So that's pretty cool. But it's very limited.
Yeah.
And I've been contacted that people want to build these lists for stuff that resides in a group or that could reside in a group, and they don't know how to pull that off. Because in Drupal, we only have those very three basic operations. Can you view it? Can you update it? Can you delete it? And they, for instance, wanted to have a list of stuff that they can put into a specific group. Or they wanted a list of users who have access to join a particular group, or they wanted a list of groups that they have access to join. Like all of these crazy combinations, well, not so crazy. They're actually very, real and tangible use cases. Um, but the reason I use the word crazy is because currently it's impossible. So it seems crazy, but it really isn't. So now I have this idea where instead of just limiting ourselves to like these three sort of like verbs, like, view, update, delete, we can add like a piece of metadata on this query that we send to the database where we say, I'm trying to do something in the context of this group and perhaps with this piece of content and, show me a list of things that follow those conditions, right? Um, and again, I found a way to make that possible. I haven't really fleshed it out yet, but I found a way to make that possible. And this seems like something that I would at first, again, build inside of group. But then if it works really well, we should probably put that in core. Um, because I mean, it's 2026. It really doesn't make sense that you can only retrieve lists from the database for like three verbs, whereas Drupal has evolved into a system where people want to do all sorts of things and create all sorts of lists. It just doesn't make sense anymore. It's too limited. Um, but you want to build it in a way that it's, very easy to extend its performance. It's safe. It needs to have all the access checks, being checked. And I think I found a good way to do that and to balance all of these conditions. So that's something I'm also excited about, working on. But again, that will not land in version 4.0. There is the final issue that I'm currently polishing, and I wish I could have finished all the other issues, but it's been a crazy year. Uh, I'm renovating my house. I changed jobs. I started a business. I've had some health issues. Like 2025 has thrown a lot my way, and I lost a lot of time that I wanted to spend on group and core. Um, so with that reality, I'm just gonna tidy up this one issue that I'm still working on, and that's gonna be Group 4.0. And then, the other features will be 4.1, 4.2, and it will gradually become more awesome. But we'll have to settle for all of the stuff that I did in early 2025, plus some efforts that I've done recently, and we'll see how we go from there.
It's amazing. I mean, thank you for all your hard effort on it. You know, I purposely didn't ask, so what's your your roadmaps and your deadlines and your milestones? I appreciate your openness and sharing, like is really being a maintainer of a module like this is takes a tremendous amount of work and effort on top of everything else that you have going on in your lives. And, people can never appreciate that enough, the sacrifices you make to make this happen. So really, it's awesome. It does a lot for Drupal. Um, yeah, really your openness, your honesty, you're willing to be, self-critical and critical of the platform in the hopes of making it better, sharing your insight and challenges, I think has been really, it's been fascinating to me and hopefully really helpful to other module maintainers. I think there's some really great topics we can follow up on, and hopefully now people have a really good sense of, where you're going with this and why and what's important to you, and don't inundate you with a lot of follow-ups on this. But yeah, again, thank you so much for joining me. A big thank you to all our listeners. You can check out past episodes at tag1.com/podcast. Send us your feedback about group, about the podcast, about future topics you'd like us to cover. You can reach us at info@tag1.com. That's TAG, the number 1.com. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss out on future conversations. Special thanks to Tracy Cooper and June Gregg for producing today's episode with input from Hank Van Zyl and Casey Bowden. Until next time, take care. Awesome.
Yeah.